India has always been a very strong advocate of peace and non-violence as being the means of bringing about understanding between all the people of the world, and these were principles that were really embraced and practiced in a very real sense by the father of the Indian nation, Mahatma Gandhi. Well, at the time that the war broke out on the Korean Peninsula, the experience of the partition of India and the first India-Pakistan war was still very fresh in the minds of the Indian people. India had tried to initiate a ceasefire proposal at the UN Security Council, but this did not succeed, and in June 1950, the United Nations Security Council had passed a resolution asking for steps to be taken to repel the armed forces who had invaded from North Korea into South Korea. The government of India also responded by sending the 60th Parachute Field Hospital, the field ambulance, to provide medical support to the friendly people of Korea. In fact, even at that time, the unit was briefed personally by the then Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and were made aware of the kind of contribution that they were making on behalf of the people of India to the South Korean people and to the progressive and liberal forces. India's 60th Parachute Field Hospital accordingly arrived in Busan Harbour in November 1950. It was split into two parts and two echelons, and one was associated with the Commonwealth Brigade and located in Pyongyang, while the other was located in Daegu, where it was tasked with creating a field hospital and providing training to Korean combat medics. During its tour of duty of almost 4 years, 60th Parafield provided medical support to almost 225,000 soldiers and Korean civilians, most of whom were on the battlefield. And in this process, 3 members of the unit were killed in action, while 23 suffered injuries. But there weren't only heartbreaking stories. I would like to tell you an amazing story of survival and enterprise against all odds. This is the story of the echelon of the 60th Parafield Unit, which actually moved to Pyongyang and was providing support on the battlefield to soldiers and civilians who had been wounded in the course of the war. So this is the commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Rangaraj, who led his men and was providing this medical support to people on the battlefield. There are about 2,500 people who were supported in this manner. In December 1950, the commanding officer of the unit was faced with what seemed to be an insurmountable dilemma. He had the option of either leaving behind the wounded people in his care and all the medical equipment and moving away, or he had the option of remaining on the battlefield and facing attack from the advancing forces of the Chinese People's Volunteer Army. As it seemed impossible that he would be able to move away and get safe passage for ferrying wounded soldiers and all the equipment that they had as part of the unit safely from Pyongyang to Seoul. But the commanding officer managed to find a third alternative, whereby he was able to safeguard the soldiers in his care and his equipment and yet move away. Some members of his unit had located a locomotive and some freight cars close by, and they managed to get all the equipment and supplies of the medical unit and the wounded people loaded onto those freight cars. They linked up the locomotive and the cars, and they drove that train all the way from Pyongyang to Seoul, literally escaping within minutes, crossing the bridge just minutes before the bridge was blown up by the US Engineers Corps to take the people back to Seoul to safety. This train carrying the men and the soldiers in the care of the field unit was the last to leave from Pyongyang before the destruction of the bridge. And had it not been for the enterprise and the initiative and the very quick thinking on the part of the members of this unit, I think the fate of that unit and of the people in its care would have been very, very different. Well, I must say that as the Indian ambassador to Korea, I feel a deep sense of pride in the contributions that have been made by our soldiers and men to this call which was made by the international community for us to go to the support of the friendly people of Korea. It was a humanitarian mission, and I am just I cannot think of a better word for describing it than to say that I feel truly proud of what we have done. On behalf of the government and the people of India, I salute you for your courage and for your selfless services rendered during the Inter-Korean War in 1950 to 53. Your sacrifices contributed to the restoration of peace on the Korean Peninsula, peace that has prevailed for 67 years now. As members of the international community and as a nation that has always prized peace, we will strive for everlasting peace so that your sacrifices do not go in vain.